Hello, mindful friends. Today we're going to be talking about how we can stay motivated to continue our meditation, mindfulness, or contemplative practices. And no matter what, every time I teach a class on meditation or mindfulness, I always hear the question, I don't have time to meditate. So how can I engage when it feels like I have not one moment in my day to meditate, to take a step back, even 5 minutes? We're so fast paced that it seems like we don't even have 5 minutes to dedicate to our practice. And I do say that the beautiful thing about mindfulness is that it is incorporated into everyday life. So if this is the case, then sometimes we don't need to delegate time just to the practice. We can do the practice while engaging in other things in life. So for instance, I'll practice when I get stopped at a stoplight. And if I'm not practicing, sometimes I'll be at the stoplight and you run through your to-do list, or you tap your foot because you're anxious to get through the light. And I find myself doing this sometimes. And we can remind ourselves that this is a gift of a few seconds, 1 minute, where we literally can't do anything else. We're in our cars, we're stopped here, can't drive. And so take that moment to engage in your practice. Focus on your breath and follow your breath. Or sometimes I will look around and try to find something I didn't see before around me. Or I'll look at something beautiful of nature that is around me in that moment and bring up my gratitude. So that is a moment where you can practice. And as Thich Nhat Hanh teaches, is there are ways to engage the practice through everything you do. When you're brushing your teeth, of saying a little gatha that is like thanking the water for showing up in your faucet, recognizing that it came from the clouds and then to the rain and then to the stream and down into the earth, and then created these water sources for you. You can practice while you're walking from the front door to the car, that instead of just thinking about where you're going and where you're going to get, you smile and smell. This is your first step out of the house. Take a smell. Feel the temperature, feel the sun, look at the tree by you. These are all ways we can practice, and we can't use the excuse, I don't have time, because it's incorporated in the things that we do in everyday life. However, I do find that my practice is stronger and more helpful if I do some designated practices. So take time out to actually intentionally engage in a meditation. And I'll go through ebbs and flows. Sometimes I don't engage as often, and I do more of the everyday life, moving through life mindfulness. And then I use my awareness to recognize if my practice is suffering, if my mindfulness is decreasing, if my happiness is decreasing. And then I recognize it's time to re-engage with some intentional practices and designate some actual space to the practice. And like I said, what motivates me to do this is simply using mindfulness, so your practice is strong enough that you can be aware of the difference in your state of being of when you're moving through life mindfully and centered and balanced, and when you're moving through life a little disconnected, discombobulated, not so aligned with heart. And when you start noticing this in the way that you're acting, the way that you're feeling, the way you're speaking, this is what motivates us to come back to the practice. Or if we haven't taken a break and we're just engaged, it's making sure that part of your practice is staying really aware of how the practice is serving you. So being really aware of how it brings more peace to your life, how your emotions feel a little more nurtured and taken care of and not so overwhelming, how your stress levels decrease, how you're acting in ways more aligned with your heart. And so this awareness of how we're doing, how we're showing up in the world, and how our practice supports that, serves us in ways that keep us aligned and well, that creates our motivation to return. So either we see how it's benefiting the transformations in our lives, or like me, when I've been out of it for a while, or I've been, too busy, it's that awareness of how is this affecting me? How am I showing up now? How am I feeling now? And when I notice I'm struggling, things feel hard, it's difficult, that motivates me to come back to the practice. So this is very different. I always tell people your motivation doesn't come from something external. We're not motivated by someone else saying, this will be really good for you. You should do 10 minutes of meditation a day. And we're definitely not motivating ourselves from a place of judgment, or like feeling duty or obligation to do it. So we're not making a regimen out of meditation. This rarely works. It's a mindset that, yes, sometimes it's good, it's kind of that military, have the structure, keep it going. But the problem with it is that the energy of mindfulness is more helpful when it's peaceful, loving, and compassionate. And regimented duties or obligations or routines often can create self-condemnation, self-judgment. They can create disappointment if we feel like we aren't living up. And then this detracts from the benefits of the actual practice. And in the long run makes us less willing to engage because there's a negative emotion around it. There's a pressure around it, and then there's this feeling of disappointment if we don't engage. So to avoid that or remedy that with our meditation practice, we don't make it regimented. We don't tell ourselves we have to do a certain number of minutes a day or a certain amount of practices in a week. It's really just a deep understanding of self, a deep understanding of how the practice is showing up in your life, how it's serving you, and then it's a willingness, it's like a love of the practice that keeps us coming back, that says, this is serving me so well. I love this practice. I love what it does for me. I love what it does for my mind. And so I have a desire. And then if we don't engage, it's like, all right, I notice I haven't been engaging. I'm not judging myself. I'm just going to observe how that feels. And when I notice that it doesn't feel so great, I'm not doing so well right now, that out of love and compassion for self, we say, okay, it's time to re-engage. And we do so with, our internal motivation there, our desire to engage there, our love of the practice to engage. And that makes the practice this peaceful, helpful, supportive presence in our lives, rather than this daunting obligation or one more thing to do. So I invite you this week to just take a look at how your practice is doing. How often you are engaging in intentional delegating time to the practice, how much you use it moving through the day, and just ask yourself and use observation to notice, is this enough? Is this serving me well? How is it supporting me? Could I engage? Do I want to engage more based on what the practice brings to my life and well-being and health and happiness? So I have very good news, is that my book is here, it's ready, it's done. Went through the checks so many times, a big process, and you can buy it anywhere that you get reading content online. In about 2 weeks, I'll have books here at the studio and would love for you to purchase them direct through me. And there'll be a book signing and reading coming soon. The next class series is an intro that will begin at the Rec Center in April, so you can look for that. And I hope to see you all very soon.